So I am Leah. I'm going to be your host for today's sessions. So Djuka here is a test engineer manager at Northwest Mutual, and she starts studying RST or Rapid Software Testing for 2 years now, but she had 23 years of experience for now. You work on a lot of things. You were a web designer, a web developer, website manager, and so on. So Djuka here is with us to share what happens in a testing session. I hope you all enjoyed. So give a round of applause in the comments for Djuka, and I'm going to.
Thank you everyone for coming to my first ever conference talk. In front of like a lot of people I don't know. Usually I do talks in my company or at work, but this is my first foray onto the global stage. So thank you for being excited as much as I am. So today, Leah actually did a really good introduction of me. So I get to skip a slide, and that's always a great thing. So I'm Djuka. I do work at Northwestern Mutual here in Milwaukee. I'm a rapid software tester, a student of the methodology, and session-based test management is part of this methodology. So I just am really excited to share with you my motivations behind the why I even chose to do this. So I became a test engineering manager about 2.5 years ago now. And that was quite a change from, an individual contributor where, I'm testing multiple stories every day and figuring things out, but I'm not necessarily super worried about all of these other things that we need to know as managers. So I wanted to know as a manager, what have we tested? What did we find? What do we need to test next? I wanted to anticipate change really well and quickly, know risks and blockers every single day so that, testers aren't just sitting around trying to figure it out on their own. Talking about our testing often, improving our reporting skills. This was a big one for us. And then also tracking and bringing up workflow and testability issues with the team. That's really important because a lot of times that is where I see that disconnect in communication between testers and development teams. Just gonna put it out there, testers, you're way too quiet. You gotta speak up. So session-based test management really makes it easy to be able to speak up and follow that up with actionable data. So those are my motivations. Oops. So as I was kind of reading through the RST materials and that I was learning from for the last 2 years, I did come across Jon and James Bach's article in Session-Based Test Management. And this is actually what got me started on this journey. It was just reading this article and thinking about all the ways that I could implement the method that they described in this article. And it's again, a lot of things have changed some things have changed with this method, but the main guts of this are in this article. And I think everyone should read it if you are going to be kind of foraying into this area. So my team and I decided that this is something that we wanted to do. My testers are very eager people, always willing to learn more. So over the past 2 years, we have honed our operation using this method, and we have adapted it to our context. So this is an ongoing exploration, and we're learning new things every day. So my first piece of advice for how we made it work is to just start and don't hesitate, really. Let your imagination go and try to figure it out day by day. The one thing that I kind of see people do is try to plan it all out like, how am I going to do this? And what are all the plans for doing this? And how will this fit into my current process? Forget all of that. Just start doing it, and you'll learn, and you'll figure it out along the way. So that's just one thing that, like, I think in our testing industry that is very planning heavy, we sometimes forget that, like, we overplan so much that we sometimes don't even do it. And that's really not good. So doing more and just right away is better, I think. So session-based test management is an activity-based test management method, and it is organized around test sessions. So let's say I'm testing an implementation of like a new feature of a product that already exists. I will immediately question whether what we built makes sense. I mean, that is my first question that comes into mind when I see anything that has been built and put in front of me. What would the user think about what we built? Would they even use it? That's a legitimate question. They don't see the build process. They don't see why we made the decisions that we made. And they don't really care about that stuff. They only see the final product. So would they be happy, upset, confused, angry, indifferent, sad? Those are all inferences that testers can make based on our experiences as users, based on, our knowledge about the actual product user, experience with the product, experience as a tester, etc. There's a number of things. And so while you're doing all of that, I'm also critically evaluating the implementation about, any agreed upon requirements. And the key word here is evaluate. I'm not verifying that a requirement made the product, like the product works. I am wanting to more look for problems. I'm discovering the ways in which it doesn't work. So that's where that evaluation comes into. I investigate and I report the bugs. I try various inputs, manipulate test data, run more interesting tests. And so all of this stuff is kind of the deep learning that happens when testing is actually happening, right? So from all of these things, we talk to developers and product managers about our findings. We talk to them about risk, and we raise those questions for discussion. And then sometimes out of those discussions, we actually figure out that what we thought we needed to build does not actually make sense. And sometimes we find that we may need to make some improvements or change our thinking completely. On my team, we have thrown away and started over just because we're really dedicated to not shipping things that we think suck. And building and testing a software product, is never as straightforward or as easy as following a set of unchanging requirements you had at the start. So that's really not a great way to think about it. Building a software product is messy, it's complex, but it's also kind of beautiful chaos, as I like to call it. So testing is activity. I want to consider the RST definition of testing, because to me, this is the best definition out there so far. So testing is the process of evaluating a product by learning about it through experiencing, exploring, and experimenting, which includes to some degree questioning, study, modeling, observation, inference, etc. So all the things I described just now we are performing those activities simultaneously and interchangeably as we test and as we learn the product. So we're discovering new things along the way. We simply do not know what we need to know at the start of the process. So again, testing is deep learning, and that learning, is not easy to encode in just an artifact like a test case, for example. And what I see a lot of these days is reporting just those passed and failed test cases or bugs that were found as a result of those, but very little in terms of anything else. And that's just not good enough. So session-based test management helps us to capture our activities and our learnings in a legible way. And by capturing that testing activity in a neatly formatted report, we really open up what happens in our world to the rest of the team and to management. So it drives up our credibility in front of our teams, and it makes it easier for us to advocate for ourselves and for our craft. So what is a test session? And why do we even use test sessions? So we use them to distinguish testing from everything else that testers do every day. So, we all know that in our day-to-day, we're not always just performing testing. So to have a kind of an accurate picture of the testing performed and the duration of that testing effort, we package all of that activity into a session. So a testing session in RST and SBTM is a period of time during which a person performs testing. So at the heart of every test session is the tester. And everything that happens in a session is a result of the tester making a series of judgments and decisions to fulfill a specific testing mission. And the tester is accountable and autonomous in this case, or in this method. They're expected to speak for their testing in their session reports and in debrief sessions with the test manager and in front of the team. So the tester is really the one that is driving all of the decisions that are made in their session. And when you contrast that with other methods of test management, you don't see that focus on the person that's doing the testing and the autonomy they have to make the decisions they're making. So this is what I really like about test sessions. So a test session is also virtually uninterrupted. So here we mean that we want the tester to spend most of their time performing testing that goes towards fulfilling the testing mission. So for this, we need focused attention and minimal distraction. And that means no meetings, emails, slacking, or chatting. Just focus on what you're supposed to do for that test. A session is also focused on a specific mission. So it always has a charter, another word for a testing mission. And that is where we specify, what problems we are looking for, what are we testing, what is our mission here. A test session may involve multiple testers, and it may or may not also involve an automation. So for example, many times we have developers on our team help us out with a testing problem while we're testing in a session. So in that scenario, the developer is the supporting tester. They're there to assist, but they're not the ones accountable for the testing. But you can also have two testers that are fully accountable for that session as well. So sessions can involve varying levels of automation. What do you use to help you test? And automation isn't just running checks. So use your imagination there. A test session results in a session report document of some kind. So that's really important that whatever is learned or perceived or done in a session, whatever happens, that it is reported in some way. And so the tester produces a session report and they detail their findings. They tell the testing story, which is a skill on its own. And once they are done with all of that, once the session has closed and they have reported what they needed to report, we talk about the test sessions in a debrief meeting. So I go into the debrief meeting with the testers and we talk about what happened in their sessions and we talk about their test reports. Did they meet the mission or not? Do we need more sessions if we didn't? Or do we need more sessions to test for stuff that they found, because we'll have some new test ideas from that. So those are all discussions that happen in session debrief. A lot of times the new or inexperienced tester might benefit from debriefing like right away after a session or the same day. But with more experienced testers, there's less of a need for frequent debriefing, but it's really important that it still happens and that you're still having those conversations one way or another. So now that I've gone into what is a test session, I know it's a lot. I made this very handy diagram with James Bach, and thank you, James, for all of your help during this. Couldn't have done it without you. I learned how to diagram from the help of James Bach, and this was a diagram I made, well, my first one actually, and it was quite the learning experience, but now I know all the things about it. So test lab, you're always testing in some sort of test lab. That test lab hopefully has a process you're following or something that you own as a process. And the test session exists in that. So here you have the tester that is at the center of this session, and they have a charter that they're trying to fulfill. So a charter or a mission is something that, you know, directs the tester to do, like to test a story or a bug, you know, analyze a function, look for a problem, prepare for a release, you know, verify a set of bug fixes, regression testing, investigate an unknown part of the product. All of those things can be testing missions. And so the tester's duty in the session is to fulfill the charter. So to meet the mission of the testing, and then to apply their own skills and heuristics while they're solving problems, to advocate for testability. So bring up issues that are happening on time. Don't let them block you forever. And, you know, that's the initiative that we're looking for in these sessions. And then also communicate with the team, of course. So we also divide a session into 3 main task categories. And this helps us really kind of break down the activity in a test session in a more clean way, way that we can analyze later. And that kind of puts the activities that we do in testing into like 3 main categories. So the first one is test execution. And so this is where any activity where a tester has a reasonable chance to discover a bug if one exists. And so during test execution, the tester is actively looking for problems in the product. They're hunting for bugs. The second task is bug investigation and reporting. So this is any activity where you know, the tester has found a bug that requires investigation and reporting, and that interrupts the test execution activity. So because if you are stopping to investigate a bug, you're not actively bug hunting anymore. Your attention is now on making sense of the bug that you found. And the third task is setup and admin. And so that's any activity in a session that is required to fulfill the charter, but which preempts or interrupts bug finding and bug reporting. So this is stuff that like you're going to need to set up the session. Like any of your test design activities are in the setup time, equipment configuration, configuring test data, reading manuals, writing session reports. So it preempts and interrupts both test execution and bug reporting. So in the report, we actually ask the tester to report the duration of the session. So we measure how long our sessions last. And then we also ask the tester to estimate the proportion of the session time they spent on each type of task. So we call these task breakdown metrics. So we want to know what and measure what tasks happened during the session, but we don't want the reporting of that task breakdown to be like super burdensome for the tester. We don't want them to spend more time reporting than they're testing. That's like the administrative load that you want to minimize. Any time the tester is spending writing reports is time they're not spending testing. So reporting on the task breakdown metrics had to be simple. So the tester would, for example, say, in this session, I spent a third of my time in test execution and a third of my time in bug investigation reporting and a third of it in setup and admin. So this is like, the model here. And all of that data is collected for every session in that report. So later I can go in and aggregate all of that and normalize the data and then, play with analytics. So it's important, again, to remember that this is a model and a representation of the method. So in the real life test session, there's really not like these like breaks between this activity. We are going between these areas fluidly as we test. And so, I may spend some time bug hunting, then run across a bug, investigate it and write it up. And then in the meantime, I've thought of another idea because I learned from this bug and I want to test that out. So I'm going to run that test and see if I find any other important bugs. And this continues until I fulfill the charter or until I stop the session, or sessions can also be interrupted by all kinds of things. So what comes out of a session, right? Well, you have new learning that I just talked about, and that goes back into that whole process that we're talking about because we're honing it as we learn. New bug reports come out of bug investigation reporting, and those go to the development team. So those are triaged just in a way you would triage any other bug. And then new test materials is stuff like test reports, coverage maps, risk lists, documentation, and materials that came out of the session that you feel would be important for the team to have. And those also all go back into the test process. So at the end of the session, of course, we have the session debrief. And so all of that, like that report, all of that knowledge is shared by the tester with the test lead. If you don't have a test lead, a senior tester is really great for these things too. And if you don't have either, get together with another tester and try to figure that out. Try to talk about the session anyway. You'll still learn stuff. But the purpose of the debrief is really for the leader to kind of accept what happened in the session or to challenge the tester. Have you thought of this? Oh, you haven't. Okay, well, maybe we need another session for that. That's the conversation that happens in session debrief. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the elements of the session report and what they are. One second, I want to look in the chat and make sure. Yeah, sorry. Not readable. I will share my slides later on with you guys. So, okay, so elements of the report. The report will always include something like the testers. Who are the testers that we're testing? The duration of the session will be written down somewhere. The charter. So what is the mission of the testing? The test data you used. And then test notes is a free form area. So this is where the tester tells the testing story. Tests they performed or didn't perform, why they chose the test they performed, and why they didn't choose the other ones that were available to them. Risks encountered, coverage lists, risk lists, anything really that helps them tell that story. Bugs section is like anything about the product that threatens its value. That's what we consider to be a bug. And so we list them in like bug 1, bug 2, bug 3, bug 4. And issues are anything in the testing process that impeded or blocked testing. So these are like testability things. The environment was down and I couldn't test, could not deploy code to the right environment. Like those are issues that we run across quite often. Anything like that. So it's not a bug, it's more of like annoyed you or didn't make you work efficiently. And then task breakdown metrics, I already talked about that, but those are also put into the report and then aggregated by the manager. So you can see a sample report in the SBTM article. I took our format from that. Sometimes the testers will add their own sections or subsections. You know, I welcome that kind of activity. Like if you can find a better way to report and, you know, tell me what you learned, by all means do it. So the report is pretty malleable, but these are the main sections. So another thing about reporting, and it's hard because it's a skill that's cultivated over time. And your reports will suck at first, but you'll get better at it. So be gentle with yourself and your team as you learn. And you know, you can always add more clarity to your reports after debrief. Like if you didn't meet a testing mission that you came to meet in that session, or if you were veered off into some other area of the product that was still important, then in that debrief, we change what the mission of the testing actually was in the report, and we like rewrite that charter. And then we know that we still need to test that other stuff we didn't get to because this other more important thing came up that changed the mission of our testing. So it's very flexible to like the tides of change, I guess. So the reporting aspect is really key to making this work. We focused on our reporting skills first and then worked up from there. I didn't even say we should do it in a format first. I was just like, please just report and tell me what you did, just to get us used to doing that first. And then later we were like, okay, yeah, we need to be more organized. So just take it easy. Like it doesn't all have to be perfect at the first time. You know, don't let the process like dictate what you're doing. You're the one in charge. So the session debrief is a meeting where, again, the tester and the manager discuss what happened in the session. And we use a pretty useful heuristic for this, apply a useful heuristic to this. So it's called proof. So these are things we asked ourselves. What happened during the session? Results is what was achieved during the session. Obstacles, what got in the way of good testing. Outlook, what still needs to be done? Do we need more missions and charters? Do we need more sessions? Feelings, how do you all feel about this? How did you feel about your testing? Is anything bothering you? Like, let's look inside. And then modify test reports based on discussion and debrief if needed. I think I talked about that already. Let me look at here what we have in chat. Okay, where and how do you store the session reports and lists of upcoming sessions? We use Jira for storing our testing reports. And I can talk about that a little more once I'm done here in just a little bit. And then I will answer all the other questions too. And they're all very good. So I just wanted to give you some examples of sessions with various task breakdowns and how we kind of look at that, right? So here's one where this session had mostly bug reporting and investigating, very little actual testing, and you know, lots of a quarter of the time was session setup. So the tester, you know, found lots of bugs they had to investigate and report, which prevented further bug hunting. And so a product that is pretty buggy that's an impact on testability, because you are having to report all of these bugs and fix all of these bugs to be able to actually test effectively. So that's a good indicator if you have a session that has a lot of bug reporting and investigating, to kind of dig in and like figure out, okay, where are we finding these bugs and why are we shipping all of these bugs to our environment? Why aren't they solved by the developer earlier on? All of those questions can be asked, but at least you got the data right in front of you to prove that there's something wrong. So here's a session where you're mostly bug hunting. So this is where the session is pretty unimpeded in their bug hunting. They find a bug here and there. Their setup time is easy. And, you know, this is where I'm going, what new interesting things did you learn? What new risks did you encounter? And I like sessions where the testers are able to mostly bug hunt, because it's what you want. You want them to find the new things. Here's a majority of a session spent in setup. And so this also may indicate testability problems. This is where I would ask, like, how did setup take that long and why? And maybe the tester can give me some feedback and I can go and, you know, figure out how we can unblock that setup time from happening in subsequent sessions. So this is where I'll bring up things like, you know, our new deployment pipeline isn't working as we expected it would, and this is impacting our testability because we're mostly always setting it up. So things like that. You can use these metrics as indicators to look deeper. So test sessions build upon each other. So your findings and your learnings from one session will inform your mission for the next session. So one thing about planning, it's impossible to plan all of the test sessions you will need in advance. Just like you can't see into the future, we're not magicians. But if you have a large body of work and you already kind of have something in front of you, you can start kind of breaking that down into more manageable missions and, you know, see where you get with that. So it is an imperfect process, and that's good. So here you can see this session gave us some new learnings where we wanted to test something more in another session. This one had quite a bit of bugs, you know, so you could see, like, from your project, what coverage areas are really buggy, what coverage areas needed a lot of setup. So that kind of thing. So more tips for success. Just start is a big one. Stop planning and start doing. Don't be afraid to make those mistakes. You have agency and you're in control of the process. Someone asked, how did you sell it to your manager? Then the question is, I didn't. I just did it. And then I told them about it later. You need to focus on your test reporting skills. Have regular debrief meetings. We can get really busy. Like on our team, we've had a lot of change lately, and we kind of slacked on our debriefs a little bit in terms of like meeting all the time, but I was still able to go into the testers' reports and read their reports and Slack them and be like, hey, you know, what did you do here? Blah, 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 blah. So that's still a sort of a debrief. So we have to stay flexible. Now we're back in a little bit of a better groove where we can have more frequent meetings. Typically the debrief meetings take like 30 minutes. I never have it go more than that. And there are some sessions we don't debrief because it depends really on like how much the tester knows the area that they're testing and stuff like that. So sometimes if they're like, they have a lot of really good domain knowledge in that area, we might skip to debrief and just be okay with reading their report. That does come with its own risks, of course, because you're not doing that talking. But again, this isn't about following a process to the T. This is about making it work for you and making it your own. So when I say you have agency to do that, you do. You just got to take it. So you can learn from every session, minimize administrative load. So this is about getting better at succinctly reporting on the session, not writing up bugs that the developer has already fixed. Those don't need to be in a Jira backlog. Things like that. If you are spending a lot of time reporting on stuff, you're not spending that time testing. So make sure that you're always aware of like how much your administration work is taking your team. The other thing is, as you start collecting session data and task breakdown metrics, analyze it and grow your analysis skills, and you'll learn so much more about your project. And just, you'll feel good too, because like you're growing those skills. And talk about your work and advocate for testing. So you can bring up a report in a meeting and be like, here's what we found in here. And what do you guys think? Like, is this a risk? Is it not? Do we need to fix this bug? We do that a lot. We bring up our reports and stand-ups in any meetings where we're with the team. The reports are also attached to anything we're testing. So like in Jira, if I'm testing a story, the report artifact will be attached to that story so that the developer or whoever later on wants to see what we did, they can just click on that report and it comes right up for them. And then, as you start doing this, please tell me about it, because I really want to know what other people are doing and how you're doing the things. It's really important that we all learn from each other. So please Twitter me or LinkedIn message or email, whatever you want. I didn't want to go into metrics too much this time around, because that's like another hour or two on average. So that would be another session, but if you want to ask me about that, that's totally cool too. So I think it's more important to focus on like what actually happens in the session rather than, all just focusing on the metrics right away. In fact, we didn't even gather metrics for the first few months of this, because I was like, I don't really want to even think about that right now. Like, I just want them to get used to this. I just want us to get in the flow. So that's where we're at.